Electric trucks are finally coming to market in a real way. Multiple companies have announced their electric trucks, but only two brands have truly shipped their trucks in some form of scale. One of those companies is brand new to shipping vehicles, Rivian. Rivian is a very exciting EV startup, and they have a very specific angle on electric vehicles. They make electric adventure vehicles. About a month ago, I took delivery of an R1T. It's their all-electric truck, and so far it has been a great experience. Today we're going to get into the good and the bad in my experience with the R1T after 1 month. So let's get into it, and a special thanks to Recurrent for sponsoring a portion of this video. With the Rivian R1T, it's important to keep a couple things in mind. The big one for me is that while Rivian is very well known at this point, the VIN for my truck is under 11,000. This is Rivian's first vehicle, so this truck is truly brand new. In some ways you can feel that, but in others it's pretty shocking to realize this is the first vehicle shipped from a new brand. Up until buying this truck, my main day-to-day experience with EVs has been with Teslas. I've driven all of their latest vehicles except the Model X regularly, but really have loved Rivian's offerings, so I was very excited to be able to take delivery last month. I'll break down every aspect of this truck and detail any complaints I have along the way. There is plenty to be extremely excited about and plenty of room for improvement as well. The R1T is an all-electric, light-duty pickup truck. Today, Rivian offers a few different configurations to be shipped in the future, but mine is the only configuration they have shipped so far. It's the Adventure package, quad motor, has the large battery pack, has forest green paint, and the 20-inch all-terrain bright wheels. One important note here is that the full range of the R1T on the 135 kilowatt-hour battery pack is a 314-mile EPA estimate. However, with the off-road wheels like I have, there's an estimated range reduction of 40 miles, so really I'm looking at 274 miles of range. This could be a reason to switch wheels in the future depending on what my main use ends up being for this truck. Just to mention up front as well, these trucks were recalled recently due to a loose fastener, so Rivian Mobile Service came to my house and fixed this. It happened a couple days after it was announced. It took them less than 5 minutes and they tightened the fasteners. Of course, a recall like this is important, but oftentimes people think, didn't Rivian recall all their vehicles? While filming this, I actually had a couple people ask me that same question. Well, yes, they did, but they fixed them all incredibly easily. All around the truck, there are interesting, quirky elements. I think it's part of what makes it stand out from other offerings out there. Up front, it's a very distinct design. The headlights are this flattened oval shape, and there's a light bar all across the front. I personally love the look of this design, but some don't. I got a comment telling me it looks like a Nintendo character, and I have to say I don't disagree, but I still love it. One cool thing here is that the light bar will glow green when charging. It's cool, but I actually turn this off because it's very bright when I'm charging at home, and I can see it through my windows since I park outside in my driveway, and it will shine if my phone is close enough for the truck to be unlocked. Up front as well, standard now in the R1T are tow hooks. On the front right of the truck is where the charge port door is, which you open by pressing these indicator lines. Inside there is a J1772 outlet and the flap to expand that to CCS for fast charging on the road. Up front and in the wheels is where you'll start to see yellow accents and Rivian compasses, which are present all around the vehicle. The rear of the truck has a light bar as well, and then you can see the very present Rivian and R1T logos. This truck specifically has many doors and openings. It has 4 standard doors for the 2 rows of seating, a truck bed with a cover, tailgate, hooks inside the bed, an understorage spot beneath the truck bed, 2 gear tunnel doors, and a powered hood. This makes for a lot of great storage, which I'll detail in a minute, but first let's talk about the tonneau cover. This was a really awesome feature of the R1T, but the experience of many owners so far has been that it breaks. Mine makes a loud sound as it finishes closing, but hasn't broken in my first month, at least until I was filming this video. At delivery, my advisor told me that Rivian was changing the design. He showed me how to schedule service when it breaks, and now Rivian has stopped production of this powered tonneau cover entirely. They are shipping a manual cover or no cover for now until they introduce the redesigned powered cover, so I won't be focusing on that cover too much. So far it's been pretty nice. You roll it open or closed with a button on the bed, and it's great to close automatically at the touch of a button. I hope it stays this way for a long time. This is the first example of an unfortunate new company feature where it's already breaking, and I'm not sure what the future holds for having this feature or not on my truck. Fun fact, I wrote and filmed this video, and in the process of filming the cover, it stopped closing all the way. It doesn't affect my usage yet because it still closes most of the way, but yeah, mine is also breaking. To get inside the R1T, the doors will automatically unlock with handles popping out on approach. Rivian gives you a key fob, which is a carabiner, and then they have their app to enable this unlock on approach feature. In practice, it's actually not super quick with the phone, and it will seemingly lock randomly. Over half the time when I approach the truck, I actually have to pull out my phone and wake up the phone before the truck unlocks. Then sometimes I'm standing right next to the truck, loading up the truck bed or anything else, and it locks on me. It's It's definitely not as optimized as Tesla's app experience here, and that could definitely be fixed in a future software update. Inside, the R1T seats 5 comfortably. I have the black mountain interior, so everything is black and the wood accents are dark. Rivian offers a few different interior options, but even this normal black interior looks fantastic in my opinion. Up front, there are 2 very nice seats. They are ventilated and heated and very adjustable. The lumbar support is particularly adjustable in this car compared to many others, and you can really dial in these seats for great comfort. They also look very cool and fit the aesthetic of the truck very well. Any adjustments you make to the driver's seat are saved to your driver profile and linked to your key. This also applies to steering wheel and mirror positioning. So when you get in the truck, it automatically adjusts all of these things to you. One thing I've noticed here that's a bit annoying is that you can't change driver profiles once you're driving. So if I didn't notice I was in my wife's profile until after I started driving, I click to change profiles and it says it's in mine, but nothing actually changes. I have to then go into park, then switch back to hers, and then back to mine, and then the seat, steering wheel, and mirrors actually adjust. Especially if it's not an extreme adjustment, changing this when driving seems like it should be fine, and Tesla does that no problem. As the driver, you have the steering wheel, window controls on your left, 2 drive stalks, a gauge cluster display, and the main 15-inch infotainment screen. This is a wider and shorter screen than in a Tesla, but since there are 2 displays, you don't really miss much here. I'll detail everything on screen in a bit. One nice thing about this truck is the pass-through in the front. There's a big open space under the front screen, and behind that is the camp speaker. This charges from the car and comes out for use as a really great sounding Bluetooth speaker when you want it. It's one of those quirks of this car, along with the flashlight integrated into the door that operates using a single 2170 battery cell. This is the same type of battery cell the car is powered from, and with 7,776 of these cells in the battery pack, this flashlight makes it 7,777 for the car. This flashlight is actually pretty handy to have at any time and have a dedicated spot for. For the Bluetooth speaker, I haven't used it much, but it does sound really great when I tested it out. Above the camp speaker is the slide-out cup holders. My only complaint here is that I wish this was a bit larger, as many adventure-type people are probably using large water bottles. Then there's a wireless charger for phones connected to the center console storage. This storage is very deep and is where I usually put my larger water bottle. For the wireless charger, it's one of those things where I don't see how this design made it to production. It looks really cool, but for one, with any phone, it's tough to find exactly where you need to place it to charge. I usually have the most success putting my phone sideways. It's especially spotty with a case on your phone as well. 2 phones sometimes work if placed correctly as well, but then as soon as you drive or take a turn, the phones will slide all around and stop charging. It really doesn't make sense as a charging option, and they really could have implemented this much better to actually hold a phone in place, at least to some degree. Tesla does this well in their cars, even though it's a very simple design. For this truck, I think I'll probably end up buying a MagSafe puck for my iPhone and plugging that into the 2 USB-C ports in the center console to keep a consistent charge there. For the center console, it releases electronically with these buttons, and sometimes it's a bit touchy. You have to find the right spot, and every once in a while, it takes me 3 or 4 tries to get this open. Most of the time it's fine though, and the storage is very deep. I have noticed as well that since the climate vents travel through this area, they definitely leak to the storage compartment. When something has been sitting in that center console for a little bit of time while you're using the AC, it ends up freezing cold. On both sides, inside the door are door pockets, and these are different because they are expandable with a stretchy band, allowing you to hold larger objects if preferred. My small complaint here would be that it's plastic instead of felt or something soft in the pocket itself, so I've already scratched up the plastic in these pockets a little bit. Above you, there are handles, which is very nice to have, especially when coming from a Tesla that lacks any handles like this. Then there are normal visors, lights that illuminate at a touch, an SOS button, hazard lights, and microphones. You can also see a few speakers, which we'll fully detail in a minute. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Recurrent. Recurrent is an app that gives EV owners confidence in their vehicle by creating battery performance reports like EV owner insights and range scores. I just bought a Rivian R1T, so my report doesn't have enough data yet, but here's an example of insights it gives an R1T owner. We can see an accurate long-term range prediction, charging averages, and much more. Since so much of that truck's value is in its 135 kilowatt-hour battery, monitoring battery and range loss essentially replaces oil changes and timing belts. Over 50 other EV models are supported as well, including Tesla. You just authenticate once, and Recurrent records your state of charge and various battery metrics each day to compare your car to hundreds or thousands of similar vehicles. This data will help you understand your actual real-world battery range, how that range changes in various weather conditions, and what it'll be like several years from now. Recurrent is currently only available in the US, but there is an international waitlist. EV Owner Insights support over 10,000 vehicles, and the community community has recorded over 100 million EV miles across all 50 states. The best part is it's completely free. With winter coming up, now is a good time to sign up so you can understand how temperature will accurately affect the overall range of your EV. To check out Recurrent for yourself, click the link in the description below. In the rear, there are 3 seats. These are heated only, and the middle seat can fold down as cup holders. It also has a small storage area here, which would make sense as a wireless charger, but it's not. There's also a roll-up door here that connects to the gear tunnel if rear passengers wanted to access something in there while driving. The obvious use here would be to put a cooler in the middle of the gear tunnel. On the back of each front seat, there are expandable seat pockets, hooks, and USB-C ports. I've seen people use these well to mount an iPad and have it plugged in for charging. Then for rear climate controls, there is a small screen. This is nice, but sometimes it feels like a bit of overkill since it's not able to be utilized for anything else. Above you in the rear are also handles, lights, and speakers. From here is where you get the best view of the glass roof as well. It's becoming more and more popular on all vehicles to have a glass roof because it provides a nice view and makes the car feel more spacious. Some have had issues with the integrity of this roof when resting anything on it though, so I'll be careful and I'll report back if I have any issues there. As a driver, there's a variety of physical controls, but they also take a lot of inspiration from Tesla here, moving certain things to the screen. On the steering wheel, there are vertical scroll wheels and left-right buttons on each side. The left side controls media, and the right side controls Driver Plus, which is their version of autopilot. I would say it's their version of a driver assistance system, but it truly looks like and is operated exactly like Tesla Autopilot. The left stock is your blinker, lights, and windshield wipers. There are your basic controls, but you can also dial things in with these switches on the stock, and they interact with the gauge cluster display. It's a great tactile feel here that doesn't feel too clicky. This is very nitpicky, but the turn signal sound is actually a bit odd. It sounds more like a low audio pop or like someone is flicking the door panel. It's also very quiet. I personally don't mind when a turn signal gets covered up by music because I prefer to hear the music without a turn signal flashing out of time, but this gets covered up almost all the time if I'm listening to something, so I'm always checking the gauge cluster to ensure I didn't leave the turn signal on after changing lanes. The right stock is dedicated to driving and works exactly like a Tesla right stock shifter. It's how you shift into drive, reverse, neutral, park, or enter Driver Plus. To shift to drive, press the brake and then press down on the drive stock. Up for reverse and press the button for park. The parking brake is automatic, so there's no secondary brake to enable. Other than that, any other controls you're thinking of are handled on screen. One great thing about the R1T and Rivian's platform is software updates. They are taking after Tesla and many other companies these days by pushing regular software updates to fix and improve your vehicle experience throughout ownership. So far in the past month, I've received 2 updates. Climate controls are on screen and very much taken from Tesla. Vent positioning is adjusted on screen by dragging these individual vent points. One very nice thing here is that you can actually turn off individual vents to dial it in exactly as you prefer. You can sync driver and passenger side, dial them in individually, put it in auto, control front and rear climate, turn on the heated steering wheel, heated and cooled seats, and turn on pet mode all from this menu. I'd love to see them add a normal keep mode here as well, because for now, the only way to keep climate when I run into a store real quick is to turn on pet mode or turn climate back on from the app once I leave the car. Some don't like companies moving to vents handled on screen, but I've found it pretty easy to dial in. It's unclear if it saves vent positioning to my driver profile though, like Tesla does. I don't think it does, since both my wife's profile and mine are the exact same positionings here. This would be a great feature to add in the future, as it makes it even more rare that you even have to use these controls. Driving the R1T is the best part of it, and that's often the case with well-made electric cars. There's plenty to be excited about everywhere in this truck, and plenty more to get into for cargo space and tech features, but driving is fantastic. It has more power than seems possible for a truck its size and weight, with a 0 to 60 in as little as 3 seconds. Doing a launch in it is pretty unbelievable and shocking. It's not quite as stomach-dropping as something like a Plaid Model S, which makes sense since that car is faster, but it's still incredibly fun. It's also useful, giving you plenty of speed whenever you need it. This particular spec is quad motor, so the power is ridiculous. The accelerator pedal is what you use the vast majority of the time because of regen braking, which enables one pedal driving, and it's dialed in incredibly well for the truck. It takes a little more pressure to get going than it does in a Tesla, but it matches the size of the truck. Regen braking is also a bit stronger here, but again, it matches the size and weight of this truck. I'm completely used to it, and it gives you so much control over the truck. One pedal driving is my absolute favorite part about driving electric cars, and the R1T absolutely nails it. The different drive modes really make a difference when driving too. All-purpose is great for daily driving, but Sport adjusts everything to make this truck handle in ways that don't seem possible either. You can lower the ride height and stiffen up the suspension for this, and it's really useful in mountain roads, which I love to drive this in. That, coupled with one-pedal driving, just makes for an awesome driving experience in the mountains. Most of the time, I just use all-purpose though, and I love being able to choose between various ride heights. The air suspension makes a sizable difference, going as low as 9.5 inches at the lowest, and 15 inches as the highest in off-road mode. I've personally yet to off-road in this truck, but plan to, and there are plenty of reviews out there showing just how incredibly it performs in many situations. Instant torque, one-pedal driving, and more really contribute to make this truck incredible in many circumstances. We'll dive all the way into the screen in a bit, but first, the cameras are really great. You can choose an overhead view, which works really well, and will display the front view camera at the same time. You can also flip this to look backwards. Alternatively, you can choose the split view, which shows the two front-facing side cameras and front camera, or the two rear-facing cameras and rear camera. It makes parking and maneuvering very easy. One complaint here is that there is a camera only used in gear guard that could absolutely be used here. If the tailgate is down, the rear camera is completely useless, and this high rear camera could be used instead, but there is no way to access it yourself. It is exclusively used for gear guard. I'd love to see this come in a future software update. For blind spot monitoring, Rivian has a more traditional system, alerting you by lighting up the indicators on the side mirrors and alerting you with a sound. For me, coming from a Tesla, I do miss the blind spot camera that pops up on turn signal, but I also feel this system warns me better than autopilot visualizations do when someone is in my blind spot. I feel pretty comfortable with this system. When you want to take a little stress out of driving, Rivian has Driver Plus. As I mentioned earlier, this is their version of Tesla Autopilot. It has visualizations exactly like Autopilot, and you initiate it the same way. One press down on the right drive stalk will go into adaptive cruise control, and two presses will put you in auto steer. This keeps you centered in your lane while braking and accelerating for you. In my experience so far, it actually does a really great job. It's a little less aggressive at accelerating and braking than Autopilot, and I like it a lot. The controls are flipped from Autopilot, so you go up and down on the scroll wheel to change following distance, and the right and left buttons will adjust your speed. One complaint here would be that it always chooses your current speed as the cruise control speed, and I wish that it would automatically adjust to the current speed limit. Right now, when I enter Driver Plus, I just immediately crank up the speed so that it will accelerate faster once it's able to do so. Then the biggest issue with Driver Plus is that it's limited. It's only available on certain roads, and near me I actually can rarely use it. Driving on the 210, it's available about 95% of my daily driving, which seems very odd. If the 210 isn't available, I imagine a lot of roads are unavailable, so I hope this expands in the future with software updates. I've also had a number of times where I'm using it, it's going well, and then it tells me I have to take over since there is no data for the road. So it's definitely not something you turn on and use for an entire drive, at least not in my experience so far. For some, driving is their focus, but for others, storage is their focus in a truck. Since the R1T is all electric, there are a lot of great storage options. Up front, there's a very large front trunk. It opens from the app, on screen, or with a button at the front of the truck, which is very nice to have. It's very large by itself, and then it has a built-in net for smaller objects, and then has storage beneath this panel. That panel lifts up, folds, and magnets up against the wall of the front trunk, which is extremely functional, and underneath there is even more space. Right now, we keep our mobile charger, ratchet straps, and a few other things in there like the air compressor hose. Inside the truck bed is an air compressor that can reach all the vehicle's own tires as well as power outlets. The bed itself is shorter than many trucks at 54 inches with the tailgate up, but of course you can put the tailgate down for added length. Underneath the bed is an understorage compartment meant to hold a full-size spare tire. This door lifts all the way up if you want it to, and has a lot of space if you choose not to use it for a spare tire. The door for this is a bit finicky though. You release it right here, and sometimes it won't release without some help. Also, it definitely needs to be latched on both sides when closing. Then there's the gear tunnel. This tunnel goes through the center of the truck and is actually extremely useful. It's a great spot to fit long cargo and has a grip mat built in, preventing things from rolling around. It also has both a 12 volt and standard 120 volt outlet inside the tunnel for anything you might need that for. It's been very useful for me so far. You release the doors on each side with a button on the top of the bed and close them manually. I've used this truck as a functional truck a few times so far, buying a couple shelves at IKEA and loading up various other cargo, and it has worked very well. My big complaint here though is with the design of the gear tunnel doors. The R1T doesn't have a bumper large enough to step on, so the way Rivian intends for you to get into the truck bed is with the gear tunnel doors on each side. They work great for this and can definitely hold the weight, but you really have to be careful around these doors when opening due to the sharp corner on each side. If you hop out of the bed quickly, you could easily snag your leg on this corner right here, and I've unfortunately seen this happen to a couple owners online. This is another design element where I'm not sure how this made it through to production. If it's the main way that you get into the truck bed, it's fairly dangerous in my opinion. I'm very conscious of it every time I use these doors. Also with these doors, I've had a bit of difficulty getting them released. On occasion, they half release, so I have to latch them and then reopen them. Releasing from the screen seems to fail for me every time as well. Additionally, these doors appear to have factory PPF on them, and mine has begun peeling a bit. A few other storage locations include the compartment under the rear seats. This can hold a decent amount of shallow cargo. The passenger side rear seat also folds up but houses a subwoofer. One interesting design choice for the R1T is the lack of a glove box. Instead, you can use the center console or these very small compartments under each of the front seats. Then there are the door pockets and seat back pockets around the vehicle. Charging the R1T has been very easy for me so far because I'm able to charge at home. I use a J1772 adapter from my Tesla wall connector, and the car has done a great job only charging during the hours I set. I plug in when I get home, and the car is good to go the next morning at whatever percentage I chose. The R1T can also fast charge at DC fast chargers on the road, but I've actually yet to put this to a complete test. I will be this weekend, so look out for a video there. Charging options on the road are a legitimate concern for EVs though. Fast chargers work well, but can have mixed reliability, which is part of why Rivian plans to have their own network in the future. I hope this expands rapidly like Tesla is doing with superchargers, and I'll report back in a future review as to how my road trip charging has been. The Rivian app works pretty well, but has a lot less functionality than I expected. You can see your range, unlock and lock the truck, open the hood, vent the windows, sound the alarm, precondition climate, or see the car's location, among other management things. You can also see nearby chargers, but for the most part that's it. They did just add an update where you can stop or start charging and change your charging percentage from the app as well. In my experience so far though, the app is actually quite a bit slower than I'm used to with the Tesla app, so I end up using it quite a bit less. Preconditioning also sometimes won't activate since it has to wake the vehicle first, and it just takes way too long. As I mentioned, this truck has two screens. The gauge cluster display gives you all relevant info. The left side will show you your next map step, your efficiency, or your tire pressure, depending on which you choose, and you can cycle through them with the buttons on the left side of the steering wheel. The right side shows your gear and speed, and the center shows you autopilot visualizations. These are Rivian's own version of visualizations here, as I've mentioned, and they're all right. They flash much like Tesla's do, but with road lines it's very unreliable, so I end up just not looking here much. It seems to get road lines wrong quite often when you're going around curves, and that could contribute to how limited Driver Plus is. The bottom right shows your drive mode, ride height, range, and battery percentage. You can choose for it to show one or the other or both, and I love being able to see both range and charge percentage here at any given time. Then comes the main display. There's a lot to love about this screen and some left to be desired. It's all Rivian's own system, so there is no Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. As far as speed and quality, it's fantastic. It's extremely responsive and is about as fast as you could ever hope it would be. It's much faster than many vehicles out there and matches Tesla's responsiveness. The dock has main climate controls like auto temperature and defrosters, as well as the 4 main apps Rivian keeps there permanently. These are Maps, Music, Drive Mode, and Vehicle. The 5th dot there is whatever you used last from the remaining apps. The 3 dots bring you the rest of the apps, including cameras, energy, gear guard, camping, phone, settings, and owner's guide. For myself, I open cameras all the time as they are extremely useful, and I wish I could customize this to have those permanently in the dock. Usually I have to dive into the extra apps menu here and then click cameras because gear guard is often the last app that was taking up that 5th slot. Up top are various options like your driver profile, garages if you have them, Alexa, notifications, and temperature. Some of these, like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, give you a status and can be tapped for quick settings. The current time is all the way at the top right of the infotainment screen, and I'd love to see this added to the gauge cluster display. There is plenty of room for it, and it doesn't really make sense for it to be all the way over there, especially as a driver. Maps look great and overall function pretty well, but they definitely leave a lot to be desired. Routes are very odd sometimes, and I've had them take me to wrong locations a number of times. One thing that frequently happens to me as well is that I'll be at an intersection ready to make my turn, and Maps recalculates as if I passed the turn even though it shows that I'm I'm there. My location will sometimes also jump forward and backward randomly. It's pretty buggy, and since they're committing to their own system as the only system in this car, it really needs improvement. I still use it for the most part, but sometimes I open my phone to ensure my route isn't insane. I really wish they could just use Google Maps or another integration like Tesla does, because Tesla Maps works great for me the vast majority of the time so that I never have to use my phone. These need some work. They look great though, and you can choose between different orientations that look great and display traffic along your route. For music, there is radio, Spotify, TuneIn, and then Bluetooth. I personally don't use Spotify, so I just end up streaming over Bluetooth from my phone, and it automatically connects when I enter the car, so it hasn't been much of a problem there at all. If I'm using Apple Music, it will actually display full track listing for the album on screen that I can interact with, so this works very well. I did notice a weird bug here though. I was listening to a 9-track album, and it displayed an album that was much longer, and it was random songs that were not related to that album. I'm not really sure where those were coming from. I checked on Apple Music and it just showed the 9 songs. The Spotify app itself is decent as well, so it does make me want to sign back up to be able to control it on screen away from my phone. I'd love to see Apple Music or Tidal added on screen here in a future software update. The sound system in this car is great, in a partnership with Meridian Audio, and they say, quote, it includes 19 speakers strategically placed throughout the cabin, powered by a 1200 watt amplifier. Overall, I can't complain about the sound system, but I am a picky music listener, and I do notice that it just isn't quite as good as a newer Model S or Model Y. This could very well be Bluetooth limitations though, since the difference I hear in audio seems mostly in fidelity of the audio. I'd guess the sound system could be much better with the speakers that it has, but it's limited by Bluetooth or Spotify streaming quality in the vehicle. The best part of the sound system to me though is the impressive subwoofer. For drive modes, there are a ton of options. All-purpose is what we keep it in most of the time, and this has a soft ride, high brake regen, and stability on. You can dial all of these options in, along with ride height on the right. All-purpose allows you to go between high, standard, and low. It's a significant difference in handling in the height of the truck, enough that you can just see it with your own eyes. This is more extreme than many cars have with an air suspension. Sport mode lowers you to a low ride height of 10.1 inches or to the lowest height of 9.5 inches. It makes the ride stiff, and you can really feel how extreme the difference is between stiff and soft ride here. Conserve is the mode for efficiency, and that is front-wheel drive only. Our Rivian advisor told us to use this sparingly as it will rip through the front tires faster, but it still gives you a lot of power. Off-road is where you can raise the truck all the way up. You can go up to 15 inches for ride height at the highest setting, and then there are options for all-terrain, soft sand, rock crawl, rally, and drift. This truck is truly built for way more performance than I have used it for thus far. The last drive mode is towing, and it will let you switch into it even if it doesn't detect a trailer. This will ride at standard or low. These drive modes are awesome and not a gimmick by any means. You really feel a ride height difference, and the ride difference in particular between stiff and soft. Most of the time I ride on standard height and soft. The vehicle menu gives you all controls to open the hood and charge port door, open the gear tunnel doors, open the tonneau cover, open the tailgate, adjust mirrors, fold mirrors, lock passenger doors, lock passenger windows, and enter car wash mode. There are also gear guard settings that allow you to choose whether it's on or off, and if you want it to be off exclusively at home. Light settings are next, and you can dial in brightness and settings for cabin lights and displays, lock the rear display, and choose accent light options. I have the display setting to auto, so when it gets dark it switches to night mode automatically, but this auto setting is comically sensitive. Almost every time I go under a dark bridge, the vehicle will switch the screens over to dark mode, which is pretty jarring at 1 p.m., and then switches back once I'm out and back in the sun. This could easily be dialed in better with a software update. The energy menu shows the range estimate, allows you to open the charge port, choose your charge limit, turn on power for the 120 volt outlets around the car, schedule charging, and dial in amperage for home charging. I have my peak hours set here and usually charge to 70% as that's what's recommended for best battery longevity. I do find it interesting here that you can only choose between these 3 charging percentages. Session summary will show you a breakdown of your last charger, and it's really useful to see. Next is Gear Guard, which is Rivian's version of Tesla Sentry mode. It records with the cameras around the car. I was going to talk about the UI of this system being less than ideal, but the day I filmed this review, Rivian pushed a software update that improved it. It makes a lot of sense now and works really well. Rivian also added a new kneel feature where the car will automatically drop the suspension on park for easy exit and entry. Those are some examples of software updates that are truly improving my experience with this car. Camping is brand new and something I have yet to try yet, but it allows you to level the truck when at a small incline. This would make the truck cabin straight if you're using it for sleeping. You can also turn on Camp Courtesy, turn off the display, choose if you want the mirror floodlights on or off, choose how the car uses power, and if the outlets are on or off. This is definitely dialed in for camping, and I'm excited to try it in the future. Phone integration is pretty basic, especially if you don't share your contacts, so I rarely use this menu, but it's connected for Bluetooth calling. Overall, it works really great and sounds great when I'm on a phone call. Lastly, there are settings for connections, and here you can set up a Rivian hotspot. It takes the LTE the car is receiving and makes a Wi-Fi network. You can also add garages and lock the camp speaker from this menu. Vehicle settings include unlock settings, mirror folding, driver plus settings, auto high beams, and more. You can choose units, see software update info, turn on various service options, and dial in exterior lights. This is where I turned off the green light for charging. There is an apps menu here, and right now it only has media and Alexa. My hope here is that in the future, this is there because they'll be adding many more apps with software updates. Then there are driver and key options, privacy and legal, and the owner's guide. As one final aside, you may have noticed a little dot in the corner of the windshield, and that's because it actually cracked from a rock on the road while we were filming this review. Definitely unfortunate, and I'll follow up with what that repair process is like. That's absolutely everything I can think of on this truck. Overall, it's a vehicle I love to drive. It's one of the best vehicles I've ever driven and brings so many great useful features that it's understandable why it's so pricey. I'm particularly excited to see Rivian ship the cheaper models on this truck and see what the future holds for scaling there, scaling the R1S, and more. This is a fantastic vehicle, and while it has plenty of quirks or annoyances that I noted throughout, it's pretty unbelievable that it's a first vehicle shipped by a company. Rivian knocked it out of the park here, and I'm hoping that most of what I mentioned throughout can be fixed in software updates. I'm also really curious to see what it's like charging with third-party chargers. In the meantime, if you want to see my experience so far with a brand new Tesla Model Y, you can check out that video linked up here or in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.